we're going to get started in just about 30 seconds to a minute. We're going to let everybody come in to the webinar. I'm watching everybody tick up on the numbers here. And when I start to seeing the numbers grow, we'll kind of get underway. So I would like to welcome you to the Every Learner Everywhere Educational Equity through Digital Learning Virtual Summer Workshop. It is a pleasure to have all of you all with us today. My name is Norma Hollaback, and I am the manager for the network programs and services with Every Learner Everywhere. Before I introduce our speaker, I would like to just take a minute or two out to tell you a little bit about Every Learner Everywhere and the mission of our network. Every Learner Everywhere is a collaboration of 12 higher education organizations with expertise in evaluating, implementing, scaling, and measuring the efficacy of digital learning and its integration into pedagogical practice. Every Learner Everywhere is one of 3 solution networks sponsored by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The other 2 networks focus on advising and developmental education. Here at Every Learner, we work with colleges and universities to build capacity among faculty and instructional support staff to improve student outcomes with digital learning. Our mission is to help institutions use new technology to innovate teaching and learning with the ultimate goal of increasing student success, especially for first-generation college students, poverty-impacted students, and students of color. We do have a few housekeeping notes that I need to take care of with you as we transition to our guest speaker. I'm going to let you throw your slide up there.
All right.
And as you're doing that, I'm going to do the housekeeping. So some quick housekeeping notes. We are recording today's session, which we will share with you after the webinar. It'll be posted in your Canvas course. Throughout the presentation, we welcome your questions in the Q&A section. If participants raise their hand, we will not be able to unmute you during the presentation, but we will be monitoring the Q&A section and the chat as well. So at this time, as a biology professor and recovering associate dean, I'm excited about today's presentation. Culturally relevant neuroeducation practices plus tech tools equals equitable classroom environments. See, I can't get it straight. Our guest speaker today is Ranjini JohnBull, Assistant Professor, Mind, Brain, and Teaching Faculty Lead, Neuro-Education Initiative at Johns Hopkins University School of Education. Dr. JohnBull serves as the faculty lead for the Mind, Brain Teaching Program. Her work centers on improving educational and life outcomes for traditionally disadvantaged students and children living in poverty through research on teaching beliefs and teaching practice. Her focuses are on teaching efficacy and the social context in which these beliefs change and interventions that improve teaching efficacy and teacher practice. This work builds on a body of literature demonstrating that teacher efficacy influences student outcomes. Her research encompasses cultural competence and teacher efficacy studies, an IES-funded arts integration and memory study in Baltimore City, and professional development investigations of the brain-targeted teaching model's effects on teaching efficacy. Prior to joining the research lab for a 2-year postdoc research fellowship, she served as a music teacher in 2 St. Louis City charter schools, provided teacher training and micro-business strategic development in Uganda with the U.S. Peace Corps, and coordinated the graduate student assessment data collection for accreditation of the Education Leadership Program at the University of Virginia. I'm going to hand it over to you, Dr. JohnBull.
Thank you so much, Norma. This is such a pleasure to be here with you all. So this is our talk, Culturally Relevant Neuroeducation Practices plus Tech Tools equal Equitable Classroom Environments. It's a mouthful, and I have stumbled over it a couple times, but we're hopefully going to get a chance to go over it all. My name is Ranjini JohnBull. You're welcome to call me Ranji, and we can get started. So we are going to go through an agenda. We're going to do some introductions, and then I'm going to go through a big picture concept map on educational equity. And then I want to talk about instructors' superpowers, which are our teaching self-efficacy and our cultural competence. And then we're going to talk a little bit about building in R&R. That's not rest and relaxation. That's rapport and relationships as a form of social justice and culturally relevant practice in the classroom. All right, so without further ado, I will want to tell you a little bit more about myself. I live in North Carolina, and I used to travel to Baltimore fairly regularly pre-COVID. I am hoping to be back in that space again. I work fully remotely from North Carolina, and we have four daughters. That's right, 4 girls. They are multi-ethnic United Nation babies. We come from 2 different by ethnic families. So I'm Sri Lankan and European American. Sri Lankan flag is on top, no order in particular. And I also have British and German roots, and my husband is Nigerian and British and German also. So we are both by ethnic, and now our children are multi-ethnic. And this is my little crew here. We love to dance, to play outside, to go camping. I love all things Harry Potter and Zumba. And I also love anything truffle flavored. And I'm a very proud Midwesterner now planted in North Carolina. Lots more other personal things I could share, but this is a little bit about me. I also identify as a cisgender heterosexual female. And yeah, that's some background information for me. So there's a lot of you in this session today, and I would like to know a little bit about you. So for the next 2 minutes, maybe 5 minutes at the most, I'd like for you to share a little bit about yourself in this Padlet. So you could either click on the link, and I think that Norma's going to put it in the chat also, or you can take your phone up there and scan the QR code. And I'm going to get in the Padlet, and I want to have a look at who's here also. So let's do that just for a few minutes. All right. You can also see who's in there yourself. Welcome to all of you. The background on this Padlet is called Phoenix Rising. And one of the reasons that I chose this is that I think that we as instructors and educators and teachers are constantly rising from new ashes. We're growing, maturing, and then we're shedding some of our old thoughts, beliefs, knowledge, and re-emerging, sometimes as neophytes, sometimes as adolescents in our fields, and growing. And we're constantly trying to improve our practice, improve our personal lives. And I think it's a good metaphor for instructors and teachers of all kind. Also, you might notice that up at the top, I've included an art paint palette, because I think that teaching can be an art if you want it to be. Some people think of teaching as a science. I think of it as both a science and an art, and getting to know each other is really a part of, in my opinion, the art of facilitating a warm, inclusive environment. This is fantastic. It's so nice to see how diverse a group we have here. This is so wonderful. From all over. Welcome to this session. Welcome to this summer. It's so exciting to be here with you. You can continue to populate that Padlet. Padlet is not the only tech tool. I will show a couple of other tech tools that I use later on, but there's lots of ways that you can incorporate tech tools to facilitate an inclusive and equitable environment. All right, I'm going to keep moving even as you're working on some of the Padlet who's. This is a concept map that marries all of the culturally relevant and neuroeducation pieces that we're going to go through. But first, I'm going to start with equitable student outcomes, because I believe that we're all here because we care about student outcomes. We care about student growth and development and healthy student growth and development. And I think that equitable student outcomes are about facilitating a healthy and well well-being, the healthy well-being of our students in their courses. There are lots of different factors that influence equitable student outcomes, including student self-efficacy and their learning practices. So their sense of whether or not they're able to achieve, whether or not they're able to do the assignments, whether they feel efficacious about, can they learn and remember and retain information. And this is also influenced by the learning environments in our classroom, or in our online classroom, or in our face-to-face classroom. One of the most impactful factors for equitable learning environments are our instructional practices and how we facilitate the learning community. And the instructional practices are influenced by our superpowers. These are those things that are implicit: our personal teaching self-efficacy and our general teaching self-efficacy. And one more superpower, our cultural competence. Those three powers over there can boost, enhance, and allow our instructional practices to bloom so that we might facilitate equitable learning environments and really facilitate students' growth and learning. Today, we're going to talk much more about the instructor and not so much about the students. Today, we're going to talk about our practices and our superpowers and our implicit beliefs, because the hope is that we can make them more explicit so that we can learn more and grow and utilize them to help us improve our practice. All right, so let's talk really quickly about teacher efficacy. Teacher efficacy has two different constructs, according to Ashton and Webb and Gibson and Dembo and a number of other researchers and scholars. I ascribe to Bandora's version of teaching efficacy in Ashton and Webb that has personal teaching efficacy, which is an individual's assessment of her or his own teaching competence. That is, do I feel that I am confident about my ability, my skills, my relationship building skills, my instructional methods, my classroom management. And then there's general teaching efficacy, where you have the teacher's expectations that teaching can influence student learning no matter who does the teaching. So this is a more generalized expectation that whoever walks in the room is going to be able to teach, and that the students will be able to learn from that teaching. So let me give you a couple of examples. I walk into a classroom, I feel very confident about my abilities and skills to teach this mathematics content. I know a lot of tricks and tools in my strategies toolbox, and I think that I can manage the classroom and facilitate good relationships with my students. I have great personal teaching efficacy, and I walk into this classroom, I see these students in front of me, and I think, no matter who walks into this classroom, I think that the teaching is going to be effective. The students are going to learn. It doesn't matter who walks in there. So that's high general efficacy. I have my high personal efficacy and high general efficacy, which combine to really boost my persistence, my motivation. When I encounter challenges with students, if they're not quite getting it, I will adjust and modify what I'm doing in order to help them, because I believe that I have the skills and competencies to do that. And I also believe that the students in this classroom are going to get it no matter who does the teaching, that teaching will impact their learning. Now, if you flip those a little bit, walk into a different classroom, and I may still have really high personal teaching efficacy. I think I know this content like the back of my hand. I can teach with my eyes closed, but I walk into the classroom and I see the students in front of me, and I think to myself, actually, no matter who teaches this class, the teaching is not going to really make an impact on the students' learning and outcomes. So that low level of general teaching efficacy combated with my high personal is going to demotivate me, right? It's not going to encourage me to persist in the face of challenges. I may not allow students to have as much control over their own learning. I may give students very rote things to do because I don't really believe that my creative strategies are going to be effective. So we have to be very be very conscious of these beliefs, because they can be our superpowers. They can also be our kryptonite if we're not aware of how efficacious we're feeling. So that's personal and general teaching efficacy. They manifest themselves, these beliefs manifest in the classroom in 3 different types of behaviors. That's classroom management, the development of student-teacher relationships and relationships between the students, and our own instructional methods. So I have engaged also in some research where I investigated the relationship between cultural competence and personal teaching efficacy and general teaching efficacy. I'm not going to go into the whole long study because that was it's probably more granular than we need to go. But let me just tell you that the cultural competence survey that I utilized defines cultural competence as a continuum. And I define cultural competence as a journey that goes on for life. So there's no point where you become culturally competent, because identities change and societies change, and there's still ways that we're always uncovering our own implicit biases and our own unconscious beliefs. So what I found in the study, that was the bottom line, was that high levels of cultural competence up here on 5 and 4 were associated with high levels of personal teaching efficacy, and low levels of cultural competence were associated with low levels of general teaching efficacy, which was not a surprise, but it had not been studied before I did my dissertation. So what this tells me, and the practical application of this, is that we need to be so aware of our beliefs about people, our beliefs about our own identities, our beliefs about who is advantaged and who is disadvantaged, and the systems of advantage that exist and the systems of oppression that exist, so that we might better facilitate learning environments that are more equitable and take into account people's identities and our own identities. All right. I say all this because the instructor's cultural competence and teaching efficacy matters. We are the central heroes in our classroom. We are the ones that have to be radiating warmth and kindness and inclusion and compassion in our learning environment, because our efficacy and cultural competence influence our practices, and our practices are the ones that influence the learning environment and the emotional climate that our students are experiencing in the classroom. So it means that we need to attend to ourselves, attending to both to our self-efficacy and our cultural competence. If we can design a space that is welcoming, warm, and compassionate and humble, our adult learners will be more likely, or adult learners or young adult learners will be more likely to succeed during their times with us. And the added benefit is that we will probably be more satisfied with our jobs at the end of it. A lot of research is around high levels of teacher efficacy is correlated with and predictive of high levels of job satisfaction. So I think, but I don't think we talk about teacher self-efficacy beliefs enough in teacher education or in any professional development that we do for faculty. And I think it's important to make what's implicit explicit, so that we can be more aware of how we're feeling, what we need to do to attend to those feelings, and how to improve. So one of the bottom lines here is that we need to take care of our teaching self-efficacy and cultural competence growth. You're already doing it because you're here. So congratulations. You are going to be, and you are already engaging in mastery experiences. According to Bandura, the ways to improve our self-efficacy is through 4 different venues: mastery experiences, vicarious experiences. That means watching other people who are in similar positions do the things that you want to do in your classroom. Verbal persuasion, you're going to be engaged in coaching, so you will be having somebody to give you that verbal persuasion, and our interpretations of our physiological states. So when we're feeling successful, we are reading and interpreting our physiological states. When we're feeling not so successful, how are we interpreting those? Those tend to influence our self-efficacy also. Also, it's important to attend to yourself, so that you can attend to your students, because if we can be aware of our self-efficacy and cultural competence, then we can help grow those things in our students too, our students' self-efficacy and cultural competence. And this can happen by choosing just small steps to continue growing or stretching, and making small adjustments in your practices or even in your daily personal practices to help yourself become more aware. There are lots of programs and pedagogies that offer strategies for creating more equitable environments in your classrooms, whether they're online or in person or blended. But the strategies only work as much as the person who is implementing them. And that is you. That is me. That's the instructor, the teacher. And so for that reason, I want us to attend to ourselves for a moment. Okay. So I want us to take just about 30 seconds to just breathe and get centered. I know I talk a lot, so I'm going to breathe also with you. We're going to do something called 4 square breathing, where we're going to breathe in for 4 seconds, breathe in, and then we're going to hold our breaths for 4 seconds. And then we're going to breathe out for 4 seconds and then do nothing for 4 seconds, okay? So sometimes if you're feeling anxious or worried or just unsettled, attending to ourselves is just as important as attending to our students. So let's breathe together. All right, here we go. I'm gonna count. Breathe in. Hold it. Breathe out. Do nothing. This is one breathing method that you can engage in anywhere, in the car, right before you get into a class setting, right before a live Zoom session, right before a keynote speech, anytime, to just settle yourself. And it's supposed to be breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, do nothing for 4 seconds. Repeat that 4 times a day or any time of the day. It's just one way of recentering. So let's see. Okay, I say this all to emphasize the point that you are worth it. You're worth the time and energy to invest in yourself and feeling well and healthy, both physically and mentally. And I just want to say, I think that these points are important because just doing things for our professional selves is not always what we need. Sometimes we need to attend to our personal selves. What I've learned from my physicians over the years is that there are 3 legs to the stool of healthy mental health and wellness, and those are sleep, good nutrition, and about 150 minutes of exercise per week. And when you don't have those and they're kind of out of balance, our mental health and our stress, our sense of efficacy tends to suffer. And in those cases, there are other legs to the stool that can help, like counseling and possibly medication. You should deal with your physician if you're feeling stressed or in one of those states. But I think it is important to note that we, as the instructor, to be able to facilitate these equitable environments, we have to attend to ourselves also, okay? And you're worth it. And I'm so excited that all of you are in this session, because it means that you believe that you are worth it and that your professional practice is worth it. Don't forget that your personal practice is also worth it. All right, so the whole point about this session is becoming more aware of yourself, your teacher self-efficacy and your cultural competence, identifying your strengths, integrating new knowledge, and dabbling with some new practices. Some recommendations, if you're looking for recommendations for cultural competence growth, which we're not going to get into deeply here, would be first to ask yourself, in what ways would you like to grow? It's a good question. There are lots of self-assessments out there. There's implicit association tests. There's the intercultural identity development scales. There's the one that I use, the self-identity inventory. You can join a book club with a friend. That became very popular during the pandemic, especially with the racial justice movements that were happening, and a great amount of awareness of advantage and disadvantage that's been happening in our country for a long time, and the racial disparities that have been apparent but have now come into view for a lot of us. take a diversity, equity, and inclusion class. That's always a good recommendation. I would challenge you to do the book club with a friend so that you can have somebody who you trust and you feel emotionally and psychologically safe with, so you can discuss some of the issues that you're ruminating on. And then also challenge yourself to get to know someone or someone else better who's not a part of your normal social group. And then rinse and repeat. The cultural competence growth journey is forever. I don't particularly consider myself culturally competent yet. I don't think I will be until I meet my maker, but that it is a lifelong journey of uncovering my beliefs and trying to be a more kind and loving and inclusive person. So I want to talk to you a little bit about exploring teacher self-efficacy through teacher self-efficacy changes through neuroeducation professional development. All right, this we used, so I'm transitioning. I've given you the concept map. I want to talk to you right now a little bit about some research. I'm not going to go too into that. We used a learning sciences neuroeducation model called the brain targeted teaching model that Dr. Mariel Hardiman developed. There are lots of different models out there, and I'm not saying that any of those are wrong or anything like that, but that I drink the Kool-Aid on this one because I think it's easy and it's a good one. It breaks down the learning sciences strategies that are applicable to education into 6 different targets. So 1, the emotional climate; 2, how to facilitate a physical environment that provides a sense of place; 3, a big picture learning design. That's the concept mapping, helping people anchor their learning into something bigger than the discrete knowledge that you're trying to teach right then; how to teach for knowledge mastery. There are lots of strategies from the learning sciences that can help students retain and remember content. We tend to encourage, and we have studied, the use of arts integration as a strategy to learn non-arts content. Brain target 5 is the application of that knowledge that has been mastered, applying it through creative problem solving and meaningful ways. And then brain target 6 is about evaluation and assessment as a tool to reinforce learning and to assess learning meaningfully. So we're not going to go through all of these. We're really going to stay up in that brain target 1 space. What we studied was groups of teachers in the Mid-Atlantic region who were interested in learning more about this. And what we hypothesized was that when teachers learned a little bit more about basic brain anatomy and physiology and neuroscience misconceptions, or otherwise known as neuromyths, that their general teaching self-efficacy would increase and their implicit biases would decrease. And we didn't measure this, but my hypothesis was also that their cultural competence increased, because many of the neuromyths and misconceptions and stereotypes out there in the public, in the media, are related to some old neuroscience that was about groups of people, and some old anthropology about groups of people and ability. So we do some of that in the beginning, and then we also taught the strategies from the brain targets. And that was for anybody to use, cross-curricular learning units. We hypothesized that personal teaching efficacy would also increase. We compare them to a matched sample. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But for right now, I would like for you to respond to a couple of the items that we used on the teacher self-efficacy scale. So, Norma, if you don't mind. Yep, there it is. You don't have to think too deeply, just yeah, put what you think. We have almost everybody has responded. All right, yeah, okay. All right, we can show the poll. All right, so this is where everybody landed here, right? So when I really try, I can get through to most difficult students, right? We've got about 22% saying that you strongly agreed, about 46% are agreeing, 24% slightly agree more than disagree, 5% slightly disagree more than agree, and 2% disagree. And I want to say that I thank you so much for trusting us with your responses. These are anonymous, but I just appreciate your candor in these. All right, there's one more. It's this question. It is, if a student did not remember information I gave in a previous lesson, I would know how to increase his or her retention. Let's see, Norma, can you do that second question? Or maybe I need, oh, you got it. Okay, thanks. We've got about 70% of the vote here. Vote, I mean, your poll responses, it's not a vote. You do not have to respond. We can share it. I'm going to end the poll and share the results. Yeah, so there are some of you that feel that you would know. Oh, sorry. Am I sharing the right? Norma, can you share? I think I've shared the wrong poll. Is this second? Here we go. Are you seeing?
Technical difficulties.
Okay, okay, I'm sorry. That's okay. I would say personally, as a teacher, before I became a postdoc of within the mind, brain, and teaching with Dr. Hardiman, I would not have been able to respond positively to the second question. If a student did not remember information I gave in a previous lesson, I would know how to increase his or her retention. My methods of studying for myself were cramming. That was it. That's what I did. K to 12 into college. I didn't engage in anything other than cramming. It worked fine for me. But which is what we would call massed practice, or we would also call those repeated rehearsals of just repeating the same content over and over, rereading that content over and over. I wouldn't have been able to point to any other strategies. So as a teacher, I also didn't use any other strategies. Let's see. I'm gonna see if, nope, that's still one. I'm gonna go to 2. I wonder if I can help. Oh,
It's not letting me go to 2.
it's not letting me go to 2. That's okay. It's no problem. But you get the point. It seemed like there was a mix of responses on whether or not you felt confident about knowing how to help your students remember information the second time around. And I acknowledge that we're in higher education. These questions are tailored for K-12 learners. That said, a lot of our higher education students are late adolescents, right? 18 through 25, 29, even, so I think they're still applicable in some ways. Well, so let me share with you what we found when we asked our respondents from our professional development. We had 2 different groups. We had a control group, and then we also had this group of teachers who in the blue. The blue for this one, when I really try, I can get through to most difficult students. They were after learning some learning science strategies. They were a bit higher than the matched control group. So you have 92% of in the blue group agreed or strongly agreed, and you had only about 76%, which is still pretty good, 76% that believed that they could get through to the most difficult students, which says a lot about the goodness of, I think, teachers and instructors, people who get into education really want to try. But that also leaves about 22% of teachers who responded to this who were unsure or uncertain. Here in this one, if a student did not remember information I gave in a previous lesson, I would know how to increase his or her retention. So after this, again, 92% were in the agree and strongly agree categories. Those who had not taken this, who had not learned some learning science strategies were much less sure. So you have about 50% here that are in the slightly disagree or slightly agree categories, which I think is something that we clearly need to attend to. And really quickly, I'm just going to throw these out there to you, right? This is in our Brain Target 4, but this is also out there in lots of the other learning sciences, neuroeducation literature. Repeated rehearsals are effective. Also interleaving, that means mixing up what you teach when you teach it and coming back to it. Some in K-12 call it spiraling. Repeated rehearsals, interleaving, spacing, not massing the practice. So spacing it out, that's kind of like interleaving, but spacing it out, coming back to things. We believe that enactment and generation and elaboration, like all of the things that arts integration recruits, can allow people to remember content even better, and it allows them to get creative with their content. So incorporating art as a part of your assessments or a part of your assignments can really engage the learners and help them remember it better. I'm just going to throw those couple things out at you. So what we also found in the general teaching efficacy, which I'm not going to ask you guys about, here's one of the items. A teacher is very limited in what he or she can achieve because a student's home environment is a large influence on his or her achievement. Here you want people to disagree with this item, right? So here's what we found. People that had learned a little bit about neuroscience and the learning science strategies and learned some effective teaching strategies that could be applied everywhere, strongly disagreed with this and disagreed. That the majority were in that category. That was about 70% disagreed or strongly disagreed. You still had some that were uncertain though, but the disagreement with this item was much greater than a control group of teachers who had not been exposed to this content. This comes all back to our superpowers of personal teaching efficacy and general teaching efficacy, and attending to those so that we can facilitate warm, equitable, and learning instructional practices, and facilitating a warm learning community so that we can build students' sense of self-efficacy, help them with their learning practices so that they understand how they think and learn. I feel like I lucked out in that massed practice worked for me and cramming worked for me. If it hadn't, I don't know where I would be now. So anyway, that's just a little bit that. This journey for you all is just the beginning. I hope it's the beginning of the summer. This is the first day. By the end of the summer, I am confident that you will likely feel much more efficacious, and that you, as long as you keep your professional goals in mind while you're doing this, and also your personal goals at the forefront, right? Attending to yourself is just as important as attending to your professional practice for your health and your well-being and your sense of self-efficacy. And I hope that along this journey, you'll consider ways to increase your self-efficacy awareness and your cultural competence awareness. So without further ado, we just want to talk a little bit about some culturally relevant application of the neuroeducation strategies using brain targeted teaching and tech tools to build in R&R relationships and rapport. All right, so I would love for you all who are experts in your own contexts to type in the chat a few thoughts about what equitable learning environments look like to you in your context. One of the things that we don't always get to do is to share with one another in these sessions. What does it look like? What does equitable learning look like for you in your context? I would love for you to just take a moment to chat in the chat. All right, I will do some 4 square breathing while you chat in the chat. It does not have to be long. Here we go. These are great. These are great. Yeah, Jennifer mentioned reduced barriers for all, manageable cognitive load, robust participation, freedom and flexibility. Yeah, where students can share their experiences and knowledge based on their unique cultural backgrounds. Christopher. Julie mentioned where learners have all the ability to participate in learning to the best of their abilities. Ability diversity is something that we don't talk about enough, and about people's neurodiverse profiles, where students feel heard, supported, and welcome into the learning environment. Yeah, where everyone feels like they belong, where they belong. That's a powerful word. Yeah, where their voice is valuable, David mentions, where a space where students know their voice is valuable and can be heard. I think this is really important. I think you guys are hitting it all really well. Agreed. So equitable learning environments are places that are safe, that are connected and successful. So they provide students with opportunities to express who they are and provide them with emotional and psychological safety. These kinds of environments allow for students to have their educational needs met. And those needs may be different for some students than others. Equity doesn't necessarily mean equality. I think, I know that is said regularly, but I think it's worth saying every time we get a chance to. It means meeting the needs of the learners where they are. These learning spaces provide opportunities for students to connect with the instructor and also to connect with one another. So that idea of belonging, yes, Everett says where students are humanized, where they're not necessarily the problem, but we're looking at them as their asset-based selves, right? These people who have potential for further development and growth, so that we can help them learn and grow more. All right, thank you for sharing. We're gonna do another chat in just a second, so keep thinking. Whoops, yeah, as in right now. So can you share some of the strategies that you use to create a warm, welcoming, and inclusive environment in the chat? I lost my chat, I'm sorry. Here it is, okay. So what are some strategies that you use? Okay, all right. Video introductions, cyber cafes, you share about yourself, humor, yes, peer tutoring, all right. Welcoming every student and engaging them. Student choice, yes. I think that one's a difficult one, right? Because that means we're letting go of some of the control in our classroom by doing student choice. And yet it is something that can make students feel so energized about their learning when we give them autonomy over how they learn and how far and deep they go. Slow start, lots of introductions to the course content and structure. Yes, this is great. This is great. Remembering all students' names, it's tough and wonderful. This is great. This is excellent, excellent. I think if I could encourage you to do this, I would encourage you to take some screenshots of these strategies to have in your back pocket. I had thought about having you do that in a Padlet also, but we are at 2:45 and I know that I have gone a little bit longer. Where the instructor establishes social presence. Yes, yes, these are all great, wonderful. You all are a wonderful, wonderful group of faculty. This is exciting, and it sounds like you're already on the way to doing amazing work. All right, so setting the emotional climate with culturally relevant pedagogy and some tech tools. You've really hit the nail on the head with a lot of these strategies. Culturally relevant pedagogy overlaps with neuroeducation strategies in a number of ways. I love Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings' version of culturally relevant pedagogy because she emphasizes cultural competence, an emphasis on academic achievement, and socio-political critique. We're not going to go into all of those today, but we have been focusing on cultural competence and facilitating by facilitating our own cultural competence growth. It helps facilitate our students' cultural competence growth and their academic achievement. So I saw a lot of different suggestions for facilitating warm and equitable learning environments in the chat. Here are just a few. Modeling identity safety in your introductions. I saw somebody talk about sharing about yourself. If you model vulnerability in the classroom, your students will be willing to be vulnerable too. And by providing a space to meet socially before the course begins is one way to do this is through meet and greet forums. I saw a cyber cafe and video introductions earlier. Also, I am a big proponent of providing audio or video responses to their introductions, or for sustaining the emotional climate through the course to their assignments, giving a short audio feedback to their assignments. If you don't have a platform on which you can do this, you could also use a WhatsApp tool, a WhatsApp app, and you can send them video or audio feedback if you're willing to share your cell phone with them. All right. I also, here's a couple of before and afters for me. Initially, when I started teaching online, I was very businesslike about my introductory welcome message in my online Blackboard space. And then I finally grew to this over here, something a little bit more personal with a photo and emojis, which there's been some literature and research on the use of emojis that lightens the tone of our emails and our text writing. So that was in the beginning on the left. And then I've moved much more to this on the right, where we have a meet and greet flip grid, and I introduce myself using video also. And this, I believe, is building rapport and relationships with my students and modeling identity safety. I think if you are teaching a lot of students, sometimes it can be difficult to build relationships, deep relationships with your students, but at minimum, you can build rapport by doing some of these high impact strategies with the tech tools like video and audio. All right. And at minimum, they will get to know you better. Here is what my meet and greet looked like before. So I used a discussion forum in Blackboard here on the left, which is okay. It was text and some people shared some pictures, but I really have liked the meet and greet video introductions using Flipgrid. So it looks like a lot of you all are already using this. Oh, Susan asked, how does one model identity safety? I think one of the things that I did in the very beginning that a lot of you actually have been engaging in here on the Padlet is by sharing who you are, right? So I shared some of my ethnicity. I shared my my gender identification, that I'm a cisgender heterosexual female. I shared some things about my family, and I've also shared I share where I live, where I work. I think there can be what I like to do, like my interests, just being vulnerable and sharing more than just, here are my degrees, here's where I'm from, here are my qualifications for being your faculty member. I think most students come in and they believe you're qualified, but But modeling the identity safety also allows for, like, if you do it, then they'll be more likely to do that. And that also means that if I'm sharing all those pieces, that means that I am modeling that these components of our identity are safe to share here, and that we're going to be approaching this class with some a level of cultural competence and cultural care and humility. Sure thing. I'm sorry, I haven't been really watching the chat, and I know Norma is collecting questions. So if you have more questions, we can get to them in a second. I'm just going to flip through these really quickly because I know that you've got lots of sessions that are coming forward. So during the semester, equitable inclusive strategies for live discussions are another way of incorporating equitable opportunities. So if you do a flipped classroom, allow the students to view the media, read their materials before you have those live moments with them, and then engage in live discussion, questions about the material and group work. This, in my opinion, maximizes your live face-to-face time with them, whether that's in synchronous sessions or on the phone or in physical face-to-face sessions. One of the things that you can do is have the students set up basic norms for live discussions. One of the things that we do is what's said here stays here, what's learned here leaves here. So that allows for some privacy and confidentiality about your learning community, and that people can be vulnerable and share specific details about their learning and their concerns and their troubles. But that the lessons can be learned and taken away. You can have people monitor airtime so that everybody gets a chance to speak. If you're online, you can have somebody monitor airtime by stacking a queue for comments in the chat versus jumping into the conversation. You can chat questions in and have somebody monitor chat questions also. There are many, many, many more strategies that you're going to be learning in your learning tracks: evidence-based teaching, differentiated learning, and adaptive courseware. It is so exciting that you guys get to engage in this. And I've really enjoyed being with you here today. So I just want to quickly remind us of what did you see and do today. We did some welcome intros, who's who. We used Padlet. We did a concept map. That's also a learning science strategy. We did a poll capturing attention about the content. The poll was using the teacher efficacy to have you share some of your information. Also interesting to think about your predictive ideas about the research, some new knowledge about attending to our self-efficacy and cultural competence. We did some chats about equitable learning environment and strategies. And this quiz right now is also, quote unquote quiz, but it's kind of active retrieval and recall and reminding. It's a repeated rehearsal also. So remember your superpowers, please. Attend to yourself so that you can facilitate that your instructional practices in your learning community, so that you can facilitate these beautiful, equitable learning environments for our students. And remember, attend to your self-efficacy, build relationships and rapport, which will lead to creating warm and inclusive learning environments. And I hope that you'll dabble with some more tech tools to maximize your impact, because one semester with you can make the impact of a lifetime. So thank you so much for listening and for participating. This was really wonderful.
So this was wonderful. We've got some questions for you. So
Okay.
Put on your superpower.
All right.
So going to a little bit earlier in your presentation, you were talking about the brain targets. The second brain target addresses the physical learning environment, sense of place.
Mm-hmm.
How does this brain target apply in a digital learning environment?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an important one. So I think it depends on what digital platforms you're using. So for example, with the use of Padlet, if you wanted to let students design their own Padlets as an assignment, they can incorporate different parts of their identity there. let's see. So also in the digital learning environment, this gets into the design of learning. So in your course spaces also. So is your course digital learning environment organized organized in a way that students can really basically make it through and navigate your course and your objectives and their assignments and their media and their readings in a way that they are following it, or are they confused, or is it frustrating to them? The physical learning environment talks about trying to design our spaces in order to capture and sustain attention and also facilitate your sense of space. So for example, in Blackboard, I think it's difficult, I think it's challenging, I think it's challenging to have students like throw up their, put content of their own there, but you can incorporate other tools to allow students to create their mark on the digital classroom, like using Flipgrid in the video comments or using Padlet as a part of a space for like a cyber cafe. We used to have a water cooler where you can share content and of that nature. There are different ways that you can apply Brain Target to the physical learning environment in the digital space. That's a good question. That was a challenging one.
So to build on that, when you were talking about the tools and technology, and one of our participants noticed that many of the people within this webinar suggested the use of video introductions to help establish that welcoming online learning environment via various conversations with both colleagues and students. And our participant says, I have learned that this practice makes some students uncomfortable as they may not wish to and feel safe to sharing a glimpse of their personal environment with their peers. This seems particularly common with some cultural groups and those who may be navigating housing insecurity and similar circumstances. Some students also indicate that sharing personal information like that makes them feel vulnerable to potential bias, etc. Students have shared the same concerns regarding sharing pictures in forums and even in student profiles as well. We would like your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that those are such important points. I think that if you put that out there, if you don't feel comfortable sharing your information, that's okay. And you can share as much as you feel comfortable, right? Like you see here, Joyce has a Bitmoji up. I mean, we can also create a social presence online using avatars and sharing as much as you want. You could, if the student did not want to share an audio or video, then I think that providing a variety of different ways in which students can connect in and share something that makes it safe for them is an important point, and which speaks to somebody, and I don't remember who chatted that in, but student choice. So allowing students the opportunity to provide an introduction in a variety of different ways. Yeah, I think that's incredibly important to be sensitive to that.
Yeah, some of us use virtual backdrops to cover our messiness.
I was like, I probably should take care of my terrible books back here, but I share that I am the mother of 4 little kids, and I figured that you all would hold me with some grace about it, because life is challenging. Sorry, go ahead, Nora.
No, that's it's been pointed out that one of our participants uses VoiceThread. You know, that way they hear your voice, but you're not having to worry about your background. And I've had that too, where students, you know, was pointed out, when you have housing insecurity, you don't really want people to know. You feel that vulnerability and you don't want to expose it. And so I do understand, and I've done that too. I've said, you know, you have a choice of video or audio. So if you want to do just some kind of a mini podcast, you know, you can do that as well. And that kind of helps alleviate some of that. So
yeah, I love VoiceThread. It's another great tool. Susan Campbell mentions here that not requiring pictures, but you could use a favorite book cover or another favorite thing. I love that idea. This is why it's so good to have these chat responses, because you all are already on it in a lot of different ways.
So we are almost at the top of the hour. I do want to say I really do appreciate this. This was extremely stimulating to my brain. My dopamine levels are now just doing all sorts of things, thinking through what you had to say today. I do want to let our participants know that we will have about a 10 or 15 minute chit chat after the presentation today, just about our workshop and what's going on in the Canvas platform and things like that. But I want to thank you very much for your time, your energy, your expertise. This was exciting. This is really going to launch our next 8 weeks into some very deep thought for all of us. So thank you very much for your time and your energy. We appreciate it.
Thank you too.